Hey friends, Jim Rhoads here with the Octane Group. I'm speaking to you from my office and studio in Clearwater, Florida, and I've got a super important message to share with you today. And for those of you that are in deep subprime or buy here, pay here space, I'm recommending that you not invest another dollar in this industry, in this particular segment, until we understand some key things I'm going to share here. And by the way, my career, for those of you who don't know me, has taken me across 26 states in buy here, pay here, and 20 plus years of doing consulting and coaching in the buy here, pay here space. So this is an area I'm deeply familiar in, and I'm a former dealer myself. So this is an area that I know quite well. Now, let's talk about how this industry has changed in the last couple of years. We recognize that cost of car has gone up. If we just look at prices in 2019 versus where we are today, that's a dramatic increase. Whether that looks like 50% in your case, 75%, we know the cost of car is up sharply. We also can probably accept that if the consumer was already struggling in 2019 to meet the end of a 36-month note, as an example, in buy here, pay here, if that's a deep subprime contract at a higher interest rate, and now we're at a 36-month contract as an example. If you accept that, if you say cost of cars are up dramatically and the consumer was already struggling in 2019 to meet the end of the contracts, then the rest of what I'm going to share with you has to be true. It's not a matter of debate. It's just simple math. We can't hide from this math, and so we've got to find other solutions and ways to make this thing work. So now let's cover this. If your cost of cars up, what does that mean for us? It means we either keep our price the same and we negotiate terms the same with the consumer, and that means less profit for us, which means less reward to risk is what I talk about. Reward to risk ratio. We want to make sure you've got enough reward in your contracts to justify the risk you're taking. Well, the cost of cars up, down payment the same, your risk is much higher. And so now we've got to find ways to solve that. We're talking to dealers about this every week, and it's a huge problem, not just for buy here, pay here dealers, but across the deep subprime auto space. So what this tells us is that we have to solve that a couple different ways. I could either, if I'm a dealer, I could start asking the customers for more down payment. That's probably going to stunt my volume because the consumer's the same. We've already established that. There's no real change for the consumer. So, and some would argue that the consumer's in worse shape now. But if the consumer's the same and the down payment is the same, then I'm going to kill my volume if I hold out for more down payment. And we would ask you to watch a whole separate video we've got on the subject of the volume formula and the costs associated with low volume. So we want to be careful about that one. And then the other one would be we could increase the customer's payment, right? If they're used to doing $400, we could ask them to try to do $450. But those of us who've been around deep subprime for a long time know the price of that one. We're going to suffer a lot more repos. The customer's already struggling to get to $400 a month. And so if we stretch, I'm just picking numbers as an example, but if we stretch them on payment, we know the outcome of that. So those things fall into kind of the shame on us category. If we're going to ask the consumer to take on more payment, that's going to have a bad outcome, and we should know better. And so this kind of falls in that shame on us category. So now the last option for us is to extend term. We can increase the price, right? But if the customer's down payment is the same and the payment is the same and the interest rate stays the same, then we know the outcome. I mean, it's just simple math. This is the part I'm saying we can't hide from. If the payment is the same, the down payment is the same, we don't have a choice except to extend term. Well, if the customer was already struggling in 2019, now we're putting more contract length on them, what do we think is going to be the outcome? I'm going to tell you, I think what we're doing is we're creating false profits and we're creating false assets, which is a really dangerous place for us to be in. I don't want to see any of my clients end up in that place, or any dealers, anybody in this space to end up in a place where we're having to suffer the consequences of that 2 years down the line. What's worse is today we could be creating profits and we'll be paying income tax on profits and profits that we're never going to put in the bank. So that's a terrible place for us to be, and we should do everything we can to avoid that. And I'm going to offer you a very real solution today, and I'm going to ask you to like this video, subscribe to our channel, share the video. We're going to have other videos related to this that will follow, and so you're going to want to subscribe and make sure that you hear the rest of the subject. But in particular, when we talk about these things, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about an Uncle Joe who's investing 50 grand in their nephew's dealership. It could be this. It doesn't matter if we're a family office or an investment firm on Wall Street. All the things we're talking about apply. We need capital in this space now more than ever. The demand is always there. Now it's even higher with the high cost of car, but we've got to be super smart about the way we introduce capital into buy here, pay here right now. One of the ways that we can solve this for dealers or anybody that's originating these contracts, is more likely going to be a solution for buy here, pay here dealers, is if you can do some irregular payment streams, okay? So this may be a new terminology to some of you. It's not a new concept. I would ask you to go make sure that it's legal in your state. Talk to your state association, your attorney, make sure you're okay to do irregular payment streams. You would need the right DMS or software. You would need the right contract within that software in order to be able to do these. And I've done them in my own dealership. I did them for years. We've taught dealers how to do them in lots of places over the years. It's a beautiful solution in this case, but I feel like it's not getting talked about enough. It's not getting enough traction. Bill Nealon at TaxMax knows about this. I mean, he knows the benefit of this, and we're out there sharing it, but we're not seeing enough dealers doing it, and we just know that this is a real solution. So let me talk to you about, and by the way, I'll do a separate video on exactly how this looks in the software and how you would schedule one. But for today, I want to just introduce the concept of, we're having this conversation in February of 22. That means that we may or may not be able to utilize this strategy exactly, or at least for this particular tax refund season. But we can certainly, on the contracts that we're originating now, we can utilize the irregular payment streams on all the contracts we do this year going into future years. If the contract that you're going to originate now is going to run 2 years or more, and they virtually all are, then imagine a scenario where your customer agrees to that typical $400 a month payment, but they agree to an extra payment each tax refund season in March, for example, of 2023, and again in March of 2024. So whatever that number looks like, Bill knows, and I agree, we don't want to put that payment too high. $800 to $1,000 promised each season is about all you want to ask your customer to do. Anything beyond that is not going to work out well for either of you. So now, if we do that though, what have we done? We've potentially shortened our risk window in this contract. We've shortened the term on the loan, keeps the customer from getting too much interest piled on, still keeps them a reasonable life expectancy or a reasonable term relative to the life expectancy of the car, and have kept their payments more comfortable throughout, and then they pay that extra each tax refund season. This is the best solution that we know to get past this unprecedented time of these high cost cars, because hopefully the industry and the cost of cars will have stabilized by the time these contracts that we're originating now are coming to term, and we would be able to approach this differently. But we feel like this is something dealers should be using all throughout the year anyway. We think is a real benefit to the consumer, and we always say, look, if it's legal in your state or your area, it's your software can do it. You got the right contract for it. If it's good for you as a dealer and it's good for your consumer, why wouldn't we do it? It's going to shorten the note. It's going to get you paid faster. So we need to really understand it, and we need to learn to take advantage of it. This doesn't have to mean that you jump into a whole new software. It might mean that you add a new software and that you originate your contracts like this in a different software for a time, which is nobody's favorite idea, but it's that important that we have this solution available. It's the best solution to keep these contracts reasonable. So I'll list in the comments those DMS providers that we're familiar with that offer special payment stream solutions. And then again, we would need the right contract. We'll also share the link in there about these other videos that we have available kind of related to this subject. But it's just going to be important that you like and subscribe, stay with us, because I'm going to share more. I'm going to teach you exactly how to go in and create these contracts that I'm talking about. And we'll ask folks to sound off on this legality part that I'm talking about, because for many of you it sounds a little too creative and it might make you uncomfortable. But again, it's not new. It's been around. We just have to get familiar with it. We have to get used to doing it. And it's a real win for you and the consumer. And it's a great way for you to solve a huge problem at a really unprecedented time in buy here, pay here.